Not a lot of entrepreneurs have the privilege of starting their business from the scratch with a team. Only a handful of people have the resources to constitute a team at the start of the business. For many entrepreneurs, you start your business solo. Take orders from your customers, prepare their orders, you deliver. However, as the business continues to grow, and if you put in the commitment that is required to grow the business, you are going to discover along the way that the business is gradually growing beyond your capacity, and then that it becomes necessary for you to employ some staff to help you manage certain components of the business. This can be very, very tricky because this can be the beginning of the fall or the rise of the business. And because business is a science, whenever anything goes wrong, it is because something wasn't done at all or something wasn't done right. How you handle this stage of your business is very, very important because it is a decision and a step that can either break or build or modernize the business. What I want to discuss with you in this video is how do you identify that your business have now reached that point when you need to employ other people in, and how do you identify the kinds of people you need. I've seen a lot of people drive their business to this point where it now became necessary for them to bring in other staff, and they basically do not realize it, or they do not understand that they have now come to that point where they need a staff. A staff is not a trainee. A staff is somebody who is competent, who is an expert in that area. Because another mistake that a lot of people make is to go and bring in trainees, people that they are training, especially people that are into cosmetics, people that are into makeup, people that are into fashion, and so many other things. They bring in trainees and they want to use those trainees as employees. They believe that those trainees could offer what employees would offer, and that is not always the case. But how do you know for sure that you have come to that point where you need employees, not trainees? The first sign that you can use to detect that you have reached that point where you need a staff is working beyond your capacity. As a solo entrepreneur, when you start your business, your business is built around your personal capacity. So you don't do things that are beyond your capacity. However, as you continue along that line and your clientele continues to grow, you are going to acquire a new set of clients that are going to require more than you are capable of offering. Now, you have two decisions to make here. It is either you go and hire people that have the capacity to service that level of client, or you lose those clients. When you have reached this point where your clients are beginning to make demands that you don't have the capacity to fulfill, then you need to hire someone. You need to employ someone into the business. The number two indicator is when repetitive tasks start consuming the bulk of your time. In the operational framework of business, there are things that are done repetitively. For example, responding to customers' inquiries, customer service, social media posting, data entry, scheduling appointments, and taking orders. When you come to a point in your business where you realize that these activities that I just mentioned is taking more of your time than the actual production or the actual rendering of the services which brings in the money, then you have come to that point where you need to bring in somebody. Because these activities I mentioned just now are operational activities, are activities that are very, very essential to the survival of the business. However, they do not bring in the revenue. What brings in the revenue is the delivery of the outcome that customers are looking for. So when you realize that you are spending more of your time doing these activities, then you need to hire someone to help you out. If you have hit these 2 points in your business, that the demands in the business is now beyond your capacity as a person, beyond your expertise as a person, and number two, that you are beginning to spend more of your time on some repetitive tasks instead of the core component of the business, then you are ready to hire a staff. Please note that it is okay to be busy once in a while. However, when these things, like I've mentioned, becomes repetitive and becomes time consuming, then you need to hire someone. Now, how do you now begin the process of hiring someone? To begin the process of hiring someone, you need to avoid the mistake a lot of entrepreneurs make. And what is that mistake? They look for people, they hire those people, then they want to define what those people should do for what those people will do. That is a wrong way to go about it. What you should do instead is to define what needs to be done. What are some of the things that are tying down your time and you need it unlocked? Identify those things in specific terms. Because what a secretary will mean to you will not be what a secretary will mean to another entrepreneur. Even when the offices, the roles sound familiar, if you go across different companies, you realize that what a secretary is doing in company A is not the same thing that another secretary is doing in company B, or that what the secretary is doing in company B is a bit more expansive than what the other person is doing in company A. It is because that role have been defined according to what the business needs to be done. So you need to, first of all, the first step you need to take is to define what exactly you need to be done. What exactly do you want to relinquish? What exactly do you want to delegate? Define the things that you want to delegate and then distribute those items into roles. Maybe you may need only 2 staff. Perhaps you need just 1 person. But you wouldn't know until you sit down and itemize the list of things that you want to stop doing by yourself and you want to delegate to an employee or want to delegate to a staff to start doing. So it is important for you to what? To itemize these things. Now, if you have itemized these things, the next thing you need to do, which is going to be the last time I'm going to mention in this video, is to make sure that those items you have itemized and that those responsibilities that you want to delegate are not going to render you idle. Because what you will be doing is that you are going to be giving out the component of the business, the very life of the business. You are going to be committing or delegating the very life of the business to someone who does not have personal passion for the business. A lot of people, a lot of employees you are going to find, especially as a startup, are not employees that are very passionate, are going to be very, very passionate about their role. Big companies, people are killing themselves to work for them because of the packages and the incentives that they offer. However, as a startup entrepreneur and as a solo entrepreneur, there is not so much that you can offer. So you do not expect that anybody you are going to bring in is someone that will come put in all his energy and all his passion the way you are doing it. So you want to be careful that in that delegation, you are not delegating the most critical and the most essential component of the business. Remember what we mentioned, that two things you are going to delegate at the start are capacities, expertise that are beyond your own expertise. And then number two is routine activities that are beginning to take your time more than the core activities of meeting customers' expectations or delivering services or products. So what are some of the roles that you may be looking at the start? Administrative assistant, sales assistant, customer support, social media manager, among others. These things I just mentioned are activities that if you want to be doing by yourself, it will be consuming a lot of your time and you not have time to focus on the core activities of the business. Finally, in building your team, make sure that you are building your team because the business demands it, the business needs it, and that the business have now grown. Remember, the emphasis should be on growth, that the business have now grown. And how do you measure this growth? Increase in revenue, increase in the size of your customers, or increase even if the size of your customers does not increase, but that the others, let's say you have the same amount of customers, but the demands that they place on the business have increased, and therefore it has also impacted the growth. It has also impacted the revenue of the business. This is very, very important. Thank you very much for watching this video. Drop your thoughts in the comment section and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.